Hi, this is Nicole Smith, and this is my mind map explaining my understanding of the lecture, a summary of our reading knowledge base. After listening to the lecture, I thought of reading instruction and practice over the years, and I really thought of it as a continuum where we were constantly researching theories and then putting them into practice and then refining them. I felt like we did this over and over through the decades until we tried to get the best of all of the research and everything we knew and put it together to create the best reading instruction possible. I also chose the McGuffey Reader as my central image because it was the most popular tool for reading instruction for almost 100 years. In the 1900s, it was considered that developing a love and respect for literature was really the same as reading instruction. Huey, in his book, disagreed, and he said that reading instruction really needed to be separate from literature instruction. In the 1910s, we see significant research into reading instruction. Judd and Gray discuss the importance of silent reading. Parker disagrees with them, and he says that silent reading is really just a matter of attention, and he really focuses on the importance of expression in oral reading, and that it is really important into comprehending what you are reading. Also, this time, Horn introduces his 5 rules for spelling. In the late 1910s and into the 1920s, Thorndike introduces his research, and he discusses his idea as reading as thinking. He says that reading is really an elaborate procedure, and that understanding a paragraph is like solving a very difficult math problem. We also see an emergent understanding of the reading teacher at this point in time. In the 1930s, basal readers were really the standard for reading instruction. We also see Rosenblatt publish her book, Literature as Exploration. In this book, she discusses her theory that meaning is as dependent on the reader as it is on the text. She says that reading should be a transaction or an interaction between the text and the reader, and that none of us really read the same thing because we all bring a little something different to our reading and what we are reading. She also introduces her theories on reader response theory. In the 1940s, the look and say method of teaching reading is being employed, and books like Dick and Jane become very popular. These books have a very controlled and repetitive vocabulary in them. At this point in time, there really isn't writing instruction. Writing instruction is really considered the same as handwriting. In the 1950s, we see a turning point in the theory of reading instruction, and Fleisch publishes his book, Why Johnny Can't Read. In this book, he highlights the idea that we need to return to phonics. He emphasizes the drill and skill method, and that students need to learn letter and letter sounds before they can do anything else. He says that we need to stop the look and say method, where students just memorize what a word looks like. In the 1960s, we see research into actual writing instruction, and students in the elementary grades are asking to write more and more. We also see a significant increase in developmental reading programs at this time. Instructional strategies like the SQ3R are being introduced into classrooms, along with directed reading activities, or the DRA. The DRA is instructional supports before, during, and after reading, and is also activities where teachers play an active role. Goodman at this time introduces his theory and research on miscues. Miscues are errors students make while they are reading, and he says that these miscues are really a window into the student's comprehension into what they are reading. He also develops his cueing system. These are 3 categories in which we can place student miscues. Shaw publishes her book, Learning to Read. This is funded research in the hope that we can put to rest what is the best approach to reading. In this book, she introduces her principles of reading. She says that the goal from first grade should be comprehension of the text and word recognition. She also says that the young students should be silently reading stories that are of high interest and that they have background or schema for. She believes that phonics instruction should begin after 50 to 100 sight words are attained, and that phonics instruction should really span through many grades, not just the early grades, and that it should never be taught in isolation. She said books that are being used to teach reading in first through third grade should have words that are highly controlled and repetitive. She also believes that students should slowly begin reading instruction, first through a readiness program, then move to formal reading instruction, and that this reading instruction should be taught in small groups. In the 1970s, Freer publishes his book where he says schools can play an active role in decreasing social inequality through transformative pedagogy. We also see Goodman introduce his idea that reading is a natural process, just like oral development. Whole language is introduced. Whole language says that reading instruction should have many components, such as authentic literature, a large literacy block in the school day. Teachers should be using thematic units. The teaching should be child-centered, and that it should employ teachable moments. At this time, Smith also publishes his book on understanding reading, where he also discusses the idea of whole language. In the 1980s, we see many studies come out about our failing schools, including the study A Nation at Risk. Cunningham introduces her research and idea about balanced literacy, where phonics and whole language play equal roles, and the reading wars rage on. In the 1990s, we finally see the reading wars coming to a close, even though Adams publishes her controversial book highlighting phonemic awareness as an important component, or the most important component in reading instruction. The Workforce Investment Act says that literacy is really greater than just reading a book. And we see legislation passed through the Reading Excellence Program. The Reading Excellence Program highlights several ideas. One being that readiness skills need to be taught in early childhood, and we have to have early intervention for those children who are struggling. It also says that all instruction, including tutoring, needs to be research-based, and that we need to broaden and expand our family literacy programs. It also says that all students should be able to read by the end of third grade. This takes us to 2000. In 2000, we see the National Reading Panel. The National Reading Panel was formed to look at all of the research that had been done over several years. They meet for 2 years. They come out with the ideas of things that are essential and important to reading instruction. They highlight phonemic awareness, phonics instruction, fluency as a key to reading, vocabulary instruction, and they also say it's extremely important that teachers, as early as possible, receive professional development on how to teach their students reading comprehension strategies. The International Reading Association says that making a difference means making it different. The idea of differentiating our instruction to make it personal, to meet the needs of all of our students. George Bush, in 2002, has the No Child Left Behind bill. This says that all students by 2014 need to be proficient on state standardized tests. We also see in 2011 the New Jersey Common Core State Standards. These standards highlight the idea that all students should be taught the same things at the same times, no matter where they are in the country. These standards build from kindergarten to 12th grade, and they are there in the hopes of preparing students not just for college, but for career readiness. I decided to highlight the International Reading Association. I think it's a fabulous association. It is not just a national network, but a global network, and they are committed to literacy instruction. They do this and support literacy professionals through professional development. They provide resources, magazines, articles, lesson plans on their website. One of the things I like about them is that they are continually advancing the quality of literacy instruction, which is basically what we see educators and researchers and theorists doing through the years, constantly working to research, refine, and put things into practice. I hope you enjoyed my presentation on the lecture.